Well, oh wait, where's Ford? You're not there.
Am I not there? Oh,
Wait.
no.
There we go. He's there. All
There
right.
we go. Okay, cool.
Welcome back, gamers. Get ready to assess this week's gaming wreckage with your hosts, Fjord and HP. What is up, guys?
What's going on? It's going to be a good one. We missed last week, which means we got a whole lot to talk about this week.
Yeah, this week is going to be more of we have like 5 or 6 things we're going to just kind of touch and go, and then we have like 2 things that we need to really touch on, and 1 thing that is like absolutely we gotta break down the nitty gritty, and it's the main topic of contingency today. And I don't know if we want to lead with it. First, we're gonna lead with what we played, but yes. To set it up, this main topic this week is going to be what is an indie game, because there's a lot of topic around the internet about what it even is anymore.
And you know what? I want a hard definition by the end of today. All right, at least for us,
I think
to
we
where
get
like.
One.
Yeah, where you and me, at least, we're like, this is exactly what it is. There's no more of this like, oh, but would this count? Like hard definitions happening today.
So to start off, I want to ask you, what did you play this week? Or the past 2 weeks, because we did miss holidays. Yeah. So
past 2 weeks, not nearly. Well, I played a lot of games, but I didn't beat a lot of games. I started a lot of stuff, tried out a lot of stuff. So, you know, obviously Destiny 2 always got it in my pocket.
Yes, sir.
New season came out, which has
good
been
so far.
Very good. Very, very good. Really like this first week. The new dungeon just came out yesterday. Absolutely loved that. Especially after going through, getting like a bunch of the lore pieces and everything. That was extremely good. You know, it's still going to be a 7-month long season. So we're definitely going to kind of putter out by probably January, February timeframe. But I'm still really excited. You know, I'm finding more and more fun things to do in that game, pretty much on the daily, honestly. So played a lot of that. And then I tried a lot of new games. One in particular, and I guess I can go a little deeper on this one, is Lethal Company. Which,
now, I wanted to say that's one of our topics today. I don't know anything about it. I have no clue what it even is. I've never even looked at it.
So I'm surprised you haven't seen it, because it's like the new viral game. In fact, you know what? I'm actually curious. Last I checked, it was number 3 on Steam charts. Right now it is number 5 on Steam charts, which is insane for a very small, very, very small early access indie game. Single developer. Yeah, so I'll kind of give you the rundown on what it is then, essentially. So Lethal Company is... it's an extraction game, I guess you could say. So essentially you drop in on planets, and you and your friends are scrap collectors. You'll drop onto a planet, go into like these ruins, collect a bunch of scrap, which can be like a bunch of random stuff like sheets of metal, bolts, plastic fish, you know, a bunch of random stuff that you can find. And you extract out with it. You get money, and that money goes towards you being able to buy more equipment or upgrades for your ship. But you do have to meet a quota, which usually you have about 3 or 4 drops that you have to meet your quota within, which means you have to make X amount of money. And if you don't make X amount of money, you get jettisoned into space, and you have to basically start all over.
Okay, so is this like it's like co-op survival horror, basically?
Co-op horror, survival horror, I feel like makes it almost sound like almost like more actiony. Like, put it this way, the only weapon you can really have in this is a shovel. There is like a stun gun, but it doesn't actually kill anything. It just kind of stops it from attacking. And then as you stun it, your friends can beat stuff up with shovels. It's very... tonally, it's very weird, because it's like, it is a horror game, and there's like some really scary stuff inside this game, but it's also really goofy. Like, it's this weird like middle ground where like it is scary, but in like a funny way.
Okay, so like I mean, because like I know this is gonna be a weird comparison, but something like Among Us. I mean, it's scary when you're being chased by someone. Period. It's less.
Yeah.
It's less that it's actually fearful of like, you know, the prototypical Michael Myers knife guy chasing you, but at the same time, it's very it's scary in the scenario, right? I would assume. Is that what you kind of mean? Like
It's scary in the scenario. Like it's very dark. There are like monster spiders, like stuff around there. And as you get to like the higher planets, there's I want to say there's like 8 or 9 planets. As you get to if you go to some of the later planets, the hard planets, there's some scary ass shit in those planets. Like it gets real really quick. In like the first planet, it's like some big bugs, a spider here or there, and then this one guy called the Flower Man who just kind of like stalks you, but you can kind of like stand up to him and he kind of runs off. He's almost like a bear in that way, where you just kind of stand and be like, "Hey, what's up?" And then he'll kind of run off, but then he'll keep following you.
so what's the how many players and what's the price point of this game?
4 players, and it is a whopping $10.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So this is the new hotness, and it's actually respecting our money here.
Yeah, and like I would challenge somebody to find me somebody who spent $10 on this game and did not get $10 of enjoyment out of it. It is legitimately some of the most fun I've had with my friends in probably almost ever. It is just so fun, the goofiness of it, how it is shallow right now, but at the same time it is kind of deep in the way of like how you want to attack the building, essentially. Like, because of all the tools you can get, like you can just go in, essentially naked, like not have any tools, just grab stuff and run away from all the things. Or you can have it to where like, there's one guy who can stay in the ship looking at the computers and the monitors, and he can kind of give you warnings on stuff that's happening. You could have it, we had one where we did shovel squad, where one of us brought the zap gun and then the other 3 had shovels. So anything that tried to walk up on us, I'd stun it, and then they all just run up and beat the hell out of it with shovels. Like,
love that.
It just has a lot of like variety and like how you can actually do the planets and like meet your quotas and everything. And like I said, it is scary. It does have those really scary moments, but there's a lot of levity to it. And I think some of that might come from like obviously you being with your friends and everything. You can laugh about, oh hey, Jimmy just got eaten by the mannequin monster guy, like, and
now, so is there like an ending, I guess, or is it more survival where you could hop in and continue where you left off, or is it like, oh, you want to do a run? Is it like a roguelike kind of deal, or can you
kind of roguelike deal? Because like I said, you essentially have these quotas that you have to meet. If you don't meet the quota, then you essentially start from ground zero again. So it is kind of that roguelike thing. It is an early access game. It's a single developer. He did not expect this, obviously, to become anything. And so I'm sure he's reeling with now the immense amount of money that he probably has in his bank account. And also the realization of, oh, I could probably make this game a lot bigger if I wanted to. Right. I kind of almost hope he doesn't. I do think that it needs more systems to like have like long-term progression, because it does kind of suck like if you don't meet quota and you lose everything. Like I do wish that like some of the upgrades to the ship, or like some of the like cosmetic stuff, like you can purchase like new suits and stuff like that. So they usually wear the orange suit, but you can get like a pajama suit, a green suit, stuff like that. I would love to see that stuff carry over, but like I said, early access, I'm sure he's going to tweak it around a lot. They mentioned wanting to do a lot of different monsters, like adding more and more monsters, because that really is kind of like one of the big selling points of it, is like all the different monsters and how they all react or don't react. For example, on the screen, I just saw what's called an eyeless dog run up and eat a guy. And that's an example where like you have to approach each of these monsters differently, because the eyeless dogs are blind. So if you stay low and really quiet, you can kind of just walk right past them. But then, this is where the funny scenarios come in. You might be outside, you went to the ship to drop off some stuff. Your buddy's still inside. They don't know that there's an eyeless dog. They walk out and they're like, oh, hey, I found all this stuff. And all of a sudden the monster comes running to go eat them and everything. And so
nice. So is this this is definitely something you would recommend for everyone to kind of just grab when they can and just 100%. Have good time with their friends?
100%.
This is what a game should be then, it sounds like. I love this.
Yes, yeah. If you've got a couple of buddies and you got like, I guarantee you, even just getting 2 to 3 nights out of this, you will have a phenomenal time. And I think you'll get more than 2 or 3 nights out of it. Like I said, like me and my buddies, we've been playing it quite a bit. I think, I can even look at my Steam right now. I've already played 15 hours of this game over just the past week. And we're only just starting to go to like the medium and hard planets. Like we've really only been doing the like easier planets to start, and so there's still like a lot that you can squeeze out of this game, and just a lot of good times. Like I said, if you got friends, like I said, four friends, $40, and one of the best nights you'll have. I almost guarantee it. One thing I will say, I totally forgot to bring this up: do not talk within Discord. Use the in-game voice.
Makes it for a better experience. I like when games do that because it makes it much.
Experience.
I love when games do that because it makes it for more of a because you can completely change how the game is. I mean, you got like games like Among Us where you're not supposed to talk during the runaround phase, but you can only talk during. So then we would all mute in Discord and then unmute. So but some when we first started playing things like Among Us, we didn't know that was kind of like part of the game. So we would be running around talking like, hey, don't kill me, and stuff like that. And that's not how you're supposed to play it, because you're supposed to be the anonymity of the whole thing, and then like not being able to talk to each other. Then they started to add in where you could talk when you're close. So using game chat was actually more viable. Same with like a lot of games. Especially social deduction games. So I'd imagine that this would add a layer of depth. This one's not as bad because for example, like Phasmophobia, we played that, and it's way more fun in voice chat as well. But the only problem that lies in that is if I wouldn't say it's way more fun, but it's a little bit more fun. But the only problem that lies with that is if you end up messing up and you die, and you're the only one on your squad that dies, which happened to me a few times, I had to wait like 10 minutes for my squad to get the evidence that they needed to get out. And then I'm just sitting there watching them play for 10 minutes. And like, while I understand that's part of the experience, at the same time, it's like, I'm playing a game with my friends. I can't spend 10 minutes not talking to them. So hopefully this game, is it proximity based? Is it...
Yep, it's all proximity, and it's all based on environment too. So like if you're in like a metal area, right?
A lot of reverb.
A lot of reverb and everything. If you're in like a canyon, it's gonna have like that canyon effect. If you're like in a small room, like you hear all that stuff. So yeah, it's always, because of proximity, your buddy can be like 2 or 3 rooms over. You kind of hear muffled like, and then all of a sudden you hear like, help, 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 help.
See, that makes it fun, but like I said, it would suck if you were like you're just trying to chill. That's the only thing, is like it adds so much to the experience that you don't want to not do it. But at the same time, if you're not near each other, it's like that's part of the game. So it's almost like, for me personally, I would have to set aside like, hey, we're playing this tonight for an hour or 2 hours or whatever. So like we all know what we're in for, because I do like to, when I'm playing a game with my friends, I want to be talking all the time. But I do agree with the savoring the experience of what it's supposed to be.
Because we're kind of the same way. So we usually get we buy a bunch of walkie-talkies, and then you can walkie-talkie each other.
Oh, okay. So that's okay. I didn't even, if you said that earlier, I didn't hear it.
No, I didn't. So
okay, so that's cool, because there's a game, Project Winter, I think it's called.
I'm familiar with that game. Yeah.
Yeah, and that game has walkie-talkies and similar aspects of proximity chat and game chat and stuff. Okay.
Yeah, so you can walkie-talkie your buddies and everything, and to your point about like if you die and then like early on, like you're just gonna kind of be sitting there. The nice thing is that the drops don't last a huge amount of time. I think the absolute longest they can last is like 13 minutes maximum, and about at least 1 to 2 of those minutes is setting up and getting in there and like doing all that kind of stuff. So realistically, you probably won't end up being out of the game too much, especially since, at least in our group, we never go the whole day, because if you go outside when it's like dark, shit gets real wild out there. A lot of stuff out there that wants to kill you.
unfortunate that the new Destiny season and the League of Legends or the leagues and RuneScape has started, because now that this sounds super interesting, I might see if I can convince the guys to hop on it, because it sounds like you're selling it for sure. I definitely want to play it.
I'm telling you, $10 for each person, and you will have a fantastic time. As long as like they're okay with like getting scared and everything like that. I know some people are like very adverse to horror.
I am adverse to horror, but this doesn't seem more horror as it does just funny or fun.
Yeah, it's definitely more funny. I would say if you do go to the later planets, like that does get pretty freaky. That was like the one run that we did where I'm like, okay, I was actually pretty scared, guys. Like that was pretty terrifying. But in the early planets, the only thing that like scares me a lot is the flower guy who just like stalks you. He's almost like an Enderman, where like in the dark you can like see his eyes just like looking at you.
Creepy.
And it's creepy, and then he'll like stalk you, so I have to keep on kind of like double checking and making sure he's not running up on you, because that dude is fast. He is real awesome. Fast.
All right, I love that.
But yeah, so that's Lethal Company. I highly recommend. It's a super mega recommend for me. Like I said, for $10, like
you can't beat that. I mean, even at 20, it sounds like it would be pretty good. But I mean, 10, very fair price.
Extremely fair price. You literally just can't beat it for what you're gonna get.
Yeah, I definitely want to check it out.
So other than that, the only other real things that I played, I did boot up. I'll talk about this one real quick. I did boot up a game called Immortals of Avium, which is like a basically if Call of Duty went fantasy. And so instead of guns and everything like that, you've got like a magic sigil thing that allows you to harness different types of magic. You know, one of the magics is basically a shotgun. One of them's like an SMG. One of them's like a semi-automatic rifle. And it's really cool. You need a pretty beefy rig to run it. Like I think the bare minimum they recommend is a 2080 just to play it on low, which is exactly what I have. So I played it on low. Still a gorgeous game. But you know, definitely had some lag time here and there. It's definitely one that I want to get back to. This is a topic I think I'd want to discuss maybe at a later time about just kind of like new IP and like how it really sucks that new IP can come along. Like people really put a lot of heart and soul into like getting new IP going, and then it doesn't sell well, and then it just kind of like that IP is now dead, which kind of is what happens to Immortals. That came out like earlier this year, didn't sell great, laid off a bunch of the studio. Now the state of the IP, who knows what it's going to be, but playing it, like, I'm like, damn, they did a lot of world building for this. Like the world is very well realized. Like, I don't know. It's a shame. I hope we see more of it. I hope it picks up enough steam that we end up seeing more of it.
Okay.
And that is everything I played. What about you, bud? What'd you end up getting into?
Just the same old. I got my hands dirty on some more RuneScape leagues, which was very fun. It's starting to slow down a bit for me. It should be picking up because I should be wanting to boss and do all the crazy late game stuff, but I found the menial tasks of the beginning of it much more fun and enjoyable than like the later ones. Like, one's like kill this boss, and then it goes kill this boss 50 times, and it's like, okay, kill this boss 170 times. Like, all right, but it used to be cry in a graveyard or dance in a wheat field or whatever, and like that stuff was very fun. Just to go through and get all those out, but those are only worth like 10 points, where it kills something 200 times is 200 points or whatever. And the more points you get, the better you end your league session in, and stuff like that. I don't know, but it's fun. And then of course Destiny, we can go more in depth on that later, but obviously all the new season stuff, very fun. Much more fun and enjoyable than I thought. I went in with the normal transitional attitude that I always have, because I always get a little bitter at the beginning of the season because I don't like I don't mind paying for the season, and I just don't like the concept of, hey, it's new, it costs money, it's new, and then you play it and you're like, oh, this is just the mission from last season but backwards or whatever. And I don't like that stuff. I don't feel like we got disrespected like that this time around. I feel like this season despite all the layoffs and stuff like that. Now, obviously, that stuff is kind of more to come because that's where the pushbacks of the dates are. But I think that this one is kind of what Destiny should be and what it's kind of transitioning into. Like, nothing was too easy, nothing was too hard. The themes of the dungeon was great, so I've actually been enjoying that. And then the other games that I've been playing, which with my boy Pasta, we've been playing on the PBE for League of Legends. We've been playing Arena because I can't wait for that to come back on live. Because once that comes back on live, that's what I'm going to be doing on the channel. That I'm going to get back into my YouTube videos for that. I cannot tell you how much I love Arena. Like, if you guys like League of Legends at all, play Arena, because it will give you a whole fresh new take on League of Legends. I absolutely love that playlist.
And when it comes back, it's permanent now, right? Like,
I believe so. That's what I heard. So,
okay,
and I really hope so, because while I love ARAMs, you can only do so much. Especially since they've ruined it, in my opinion, because they a couple years ago, like, that's kind of what the boys and I like to typically wind down on. We hop on some ARAMs, but then it starts to become a sweat fest, and it's not as fun. But they made it a little bit, like, I want to say competitive, but it's ARAM, it's random. So, but back in the day, about 3 or 4 years ago, they added to where you could ban champions beforehand, and I loved that because we, as the players, we know what's good and what's bad in ARAM. Like, if you got X champion, you're like, oh, well, they're not gonna win, but they're set up for it because they have these sets of champions or whatever, and our champion pool is not very good. But if you could ban, you can kind of ban it out so they can't get. Now, it's still random, but you're banning like VOP champions. Like, if you think Brand is just too tough in ARAMs, you don't want to deal with Brand, we ban Brand. But now it doesn't matter, because they took it out, because the loud minority spoke up, and that's all they listened to, because the majority was just enjoying it.
Yeah, just playing the game.
Yeah, so but that's why we like Arena so much, and yeah, I do hope it's permanent. God, I love it so much. It's so fun. But that's really all I've been up to, other than RPG, of course. We play that on stream all week. Mm-hmm. Very fun. Still don't understand why in some towns the frames drop to like 10. I don't understand that. Because in the battles they're perfect. Everything's great.
Yeah, it is very odd, because you think towns, like, most of it's pretty static, so I'm not sure what is causing, like, it to suddenly have, like, so much kind of issues rendering all that when it should be all static, whereas, like, in a battle you kind of expect it because it's a little bit more, like, random in what can happen.
Which is even more weird, because you got something like Tears of the Kingdom, where you can go from the Sky Islands to the mainland into the depths with not only no loading screen, but no frame drops. 0. Yeah. And then you go to Mario RPG, like, what is that? It's just a remake. And then you go into town and it's like just like stuttering, and I'm like, how is this even happening? I don't know. Other than that, the game has been fantastic. I've had a smile on my face 99% of the time. So, very fun. And that's what I've been getting up to.
Yeah, I've been catching your streams when I can and watching it, and yeah, it seems great. I will say, I do kind of miss the pixel art style. I wish it did have a, like, ability to switch between the art styles, kind of like you said you can with the music, right?
Yeah. Halo also did that for Halo 1 remake and then Halo 2 remake, so that's pretty cool.
Maybe it's just because I've been playing Sea of Stars, but, like, yeah, I
mean, it's a style choice. I'm with you.
It's a style choice, yeah.
I'm with you. I like that type of stuff. I mean, people look, when I say that one of my favorite games is Celeste, I have some friends who think that I'm insane, because they look at it, they've never played it, and they probably never will, but they look at it and they're like, what is this game? This looks like a game from 1996. And you're absolutely right, because that's what it looks like. That's not what it plays like, and it's very beautiful. But that's just, it's just a style choice. Celeste could very well look like Mario Wonder, but it doesn't, and I don't know.
Hey, that can even go into our indie game conversation.
Yeah, we'll get into that. But that is an indie game, and that's what.
We'll get there.
So we glazed over Mario RPG, which and then we still got to save what is an indie game, because I think that is our hot button here. We talked about what we played, which I didn't even have on here, so we talked about what we played. Okay, I want to, since we already touched on both of us playing Destiny, we can go ahead
Yeah, let's talk
into
about
the
it.
Destiny officially pushing back the final shape. We knew it was going to happen, but it's
Yes, it was
official
more
now.
so of a when was it going to happen. I will say, I'm surprised it ended up only being June. I thought it was going to get pushed back later. I was in the camp where I'm like, I'm not surprised if this gets pushed back to 2025.
2025. Wow.
Yeah, man. I don't know, because like they're really up against like an almost if they can solve this problem, they will be one of the only ones to ever do it, which is how are we going to keep people around after Final Shape?
Mhm.
Because Final Shape not only has to be the pinnacle, but it has to be so good
I agree with
that
you.
people are like, oh, I need to stick around for these episodes that are going to happen afterwards.
Right. And then so we're still getting this. Not 2024 will still be light and dark. It's still the culmination because like the final shape itself isn't the ending. That year is the ending, right?
Yeah.
So I
Well,
mean,
kind of, because the way they talk about episodes is they definitely talk about them as epilogues to the light and dark saga. So whether you want to include that with the whole light and dark thing, I'm not sure. I think actually with the dungeon this Friday, we got kind of maybe like a bit of a teaser slash some like questions popping up, some seeds planted for what one of the episodes is going to be about with the Scorn. Because they're, if you listen to the Ahamkara Bones, one of them's like, oh yeah, Fickrell's been missing for like a while. He hasn't been on the Tangled Shore. And if you don't remember, because Destiny's got a million names. Fickrell is the Scorn like leader that Uldren, resurrected and everything like that. And so Crow's got his whole heart tangled up where he's like, Fickrell looks at me as like his father and stuff. And so I think that's going to be a big part of what we deal with in those episodes. So yeah, they are up against a tough problem. The one thing I do want to give a major props on is typically in these, we've had this happen. This is now the third time we've had a long season leading up to an expansion because of a delay. We had it in Season of Arrivals, we had it in Season of the Lost, and we now have it during the Season of the Wish. Season of the Lost had the Bungie 30th anniversary pack come out, and so we had a good content drop in the middle of that. Arrivals did not. I will say, I'm impressed with how much they're actually going to be able to put out between now and Final Shape. They talked about it already, how we're obviously going to have all the Final Shape stuff going up to February. And then I expected we were just going to get almost nothing until like maybe May. They would do a quick content drop and then we go into Final Shape. But I watched the Joe Blackburn video, and February we've got an event coming in. March we got an event coming in, plus like some other stuff. And
yeah, I
like
mean
the
they're gonna
map
have
pack
to,
and
right?
everything.
They're probably just kind of putting out some of the smaller things that they had planned and just kind of pushing them a little forward while they could put the big stuff in the back.
Yeah, that's what I imagine they're doing. And then they have that whole, they talked about Into the Light being kind of their 30th anniversary edition, like content pack coming out in April. Not a lot of details on that, but the only thing they said is that it's built for both new players and veterans with thousands of hours. And I'm like, that's extremely vague and tells me nothing about what this is.
Right.
But I'm sure it'll be good.
Yeah, but that's just a marketing ploy too, right? That every company says that. Like any company that's been around for a while, it's always good for veterans and new alike, blah blah blah. Like because they want to appeal to the massest of the biggest of audience that they can. So
especially right now with where Destiny's at and everything. So I will say I if there was a season have be long, I do think it's going to be this season. The season seems great. The activity seems great. The new dungeon's going to have a bunch of secrets and stuff for us to delve through. I mean, there's going to be plenty of stuff for us to do between now and then. I still worry a lot about what happens post Final Shape and the episodes, and kind of where they end up going with the franchise. I don't think the franchise is dead, obviously, but I do worry about what they can do after Final Shape.
I feel like it just turns into a PvP stalemate over the years, and there might still be the PvE content drops here or there, but I think they're gonna shift quite a bit of their resources over to Marathon after this. So we get that culmination, we move to a new chapter, they test the waters, If it's great, we continue to push it out. Probably not as hard as we used to, and then we move on over to Marathon and get ready for that. Which I'm gonna be honest, Bungie, make it happen, because Tarkov is the only one of its kind right now, because Dark and Darker is on the black web, and I see Dark and Darker clips every now and then, and I'm almost gonna risk my computer for it, because it looks so fun. I played it and I loved it so much, and I don't have really any interest in Tarkov. It seems a little too unforgiving, a little too gritty for me, a little too cheater heavy too. So there needs to be some competition with Tarkov. And I like Dark and Darker because I like the thematic of, like, it's very thematic of what I enjoy. Is the medieval style. So Bungie, get on that Marathon so I can have my sci-fi boy part of it too.
I'm right there with you, man. I'm very excited for Marathon. I think that it's gonna kind of be the first big kind of AAA extraction shooter
or indie, whatever we want, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever. Yeah, whatever. We're indie, you know. Whatever. It's gonna be.
Bungie's indie now.
I mean, hey, if it's published by Bungie, isn't it indie? You know.
We'll get into that later. We're making jokes.
I do hope, to your point, I hope that what I would kind of want from Bungie with Destiny at this point, and I feel like this probably wouldn't make the Destiny community happy, but I feel like it needs to happen. I feel like Final Shape needs to come out. We do the 3 episodes. We do 3 more episodes. And then we get another expansion. So basically give us a 2-year gap between expansions. I think that's what we need. I think we need a little bit of a reset button. Not necessarily like actually resetting the game, but just like, you know, Bungie people will stick around, play the episodes, and kind of give them more time to cook so that when they come back with this new saga, it is, you know, a big coming out party. Oh, it's back after 2 years. Almost similar to how like Assassin's Creed did it when they switched genres and kind of were like, oh, we're doing this new Assassin's Creed. They gave it like a 2-year break, and then they came back swinging, and it was awesome. And that helped with that fatigue of that franchise quite a bit. And I think that's kind of what we need right now is still have content, still have episodes. You know, people like us, or at least me, I don't know how you feel about the episodes, but I'll stick around.
I just feel like it's the same thing. It's just a different name.
I have thought about that because we did talk about that a little bit before. The one thing they could do to make episodes different for me and make them better than seasons is make it so that they're around forever. I think that.
Yeah, I agreed with you on that one. We talked about that a little bit.
Oh, did we? Okay. Because
I think privately we did, yeah.
I think I've been thinking about it more and more, and I'm like, yeah, how could I recommend Destiny to somebody right now when like, oh man, you weren't here for when like this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. Like they just can't experience that stuff other than cutscenes. And that's not really the same, you know? And so I feel like going into this next saga, they need to make it so that every piece of that saga is playable. Maybe not required. So like if you don't want to have episode 1 or whatever it's going to be, no big deal. Like it's not going to affect the overall game, but they need to make it so that even if I get into Destiny 4 years from now, I can still go back and play that episode. I
agree with that. So I was thinking the other day about this. I don't think that you get new players. The new player experience comes from gameplay. Let's be real. The veterans and the longer term people are the ones who are going to be more interested in the story. Like, for example, I'm not saying nobody, because I'm a veteran and I still don't, I wouldn't say I don't care about the story, because when you and Pasta mention things, I'm like, oh, that's cool, and I move on. I don't care so much to research it on my own, but I love hearing about it. And I think that's fair enough, because I'm a gamer to be a gamer, not a gamer to hear a story. I know that they go in tandem, but that's not how I consume media. I consume media when I'm watching something, I want to watch something. When I'm playing something, I want to play something. And so I know that I'm in the minority in that case. But however, when you're invested in the longevity of a series like Destiny, where you got from the beginning, we knew Cade, now we don't have Cade, it kind of, you know, and we have this huge story that spans across how many 8, 9, 10 years almost.
10 years, yeah.
Yeah, so a new player, like let's say you have some friends who've never played Destiny and you finally get them into playing it. They don't care that Cade is dead or he's in limbo or whatever. They don't care immediately. right? They want to hop in and play with you and enjoy the game with you. And then once they're invested, they're like, oh, that raid we did, that's where the guy went, and they start connecting the dots, and then that's when they start to kind of get into it after a couple months or maybe years, and then they start to enjoy the story that is. So in my opinion, the initial experience for the new player needs to be good game and intuitive UI and stuff. So they're getting better. I mean, they have the vault in space now, in orbit now, and so that type of stuff is the stuff that we've always needed. And I think it's weird to make that a point of like, we did something good. It's like, yeah, 10 years later, but that's fine. So the more that we get, the better it is. And so the new player can jump in and like, I mean, I still do this today. Literally, like, I'll be in there with Pasta and he'll be like, oh, can we do this dungeon real quick? I need this gun or whatever. And I'm like, okay. So then we'll be playing and I'll be like, what planet was that on again? I don't know, dude. I don't remember these things. And like, and I can't imagine all of you guys do all the time for every little thing. And it's like, and we're the veterans. So there needs to be a better UI and more intuitive. And then because the gameplay sells itself, it's very fun. It's very fun. And so when you get someone in and it's not as convoluted, then they can understand it. Then they can have fun and then they'll get invested in your story. And so the fact that you have episodes that you can peer back into the past with, once that person is invested, that's genius. So yes, that is where episodes will strive, because you will be able to look back into the past at the things you might have missed. But for the new player, they're not invested immediately, so they don't care. Invested in the story.
Do you think that, because I actually agree with you a lot, where I think that getting them access to the gameplay stuff is the most important thing, because like you said, it sells itself. It's Bungie gunplay. Not a lot of studios.
Unbeatable.
There's two studios I can think of off the top of my head that kind of can get up there, but even then, it's,
Halo.
Yeah, 343 and which is basically Bungie
incarnate,
yeah, and then Respawn. Those are the only companies that I can think of that
I would agree with
even get close on that. And so I agree with you. So actually, I want to ask you then. I didn't even plan on talking to you about this, but what do you think about this new Fireteam LFG in-game finder thing? Do you think this is going to move the needle in a big way? Because think about it this way. I don't know if you know the statistic. I believe it's only about 11 or 12% of Destiny players have played a raid.
I think it's increased. I think it's increased, but yeah, I know it's low. And so I have two sides to this, right? I'm two-faced with this, right? I think on the one hand, you got that's amazing for the player. For the player, you're like, oh, we all become Datto, and Datto's a pretentious, oh, well, I think all raids should be impossible to play because I'm better than all of you guys, right? There's that aspect of it. I'm not trying to throw shade, but he is elitist for sure. And I get that. From the player standpoint, that's how you want to be. You want to be like, I did something that other people cannot accomplish. But this isn't real life. This is a video game. So if other people can't experience these things, they might feel left out if they don't have friends to play with or whatever. So using other means like Discord is probably not the best idea in Bungie's company terms. So that's where the two-face kind of lies to it, because Bungie as a company, what they should do, what this makes sense for them, because they made content, and if 80% of their players aren't even playing that content that they created, who are they creating it for?
The best content in the game, debatably, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, without question.
I wouldn't be into Destiny as much as I am if it wasn't for raids. And
that's the only reason I'm into Destiny anymore, because I have figured it out. Because you mentioned it earlier, and I was going to call you out on it, and it's not your fault. It's their fault. You're like, there's so many secrets to be explored in the new dungeon, and I agree with you. But at the same time, there's really not, because we're going to get into that secret, and you know what that secret's going to be? A piece of armor from that raid that or the dungeon that we already have, or a gun that we already have, or a red border version of the gun we already have. Like, it's not going to be anything like game changing in that secret.
That's fair. Yeah.
And to be honest, I think they should add more cosmetic things to secrets, more rewards from secrets. Not, oh, you got the secret chest. Well, it's just an extra, because a secret chest is just an extra drop. It's not a secret.
But you get lore now with it too. You get some voice lines, a little bit of
Okay, so
lore
that's fair.
sprinkled in.
That's fair. So we haven't done anything in terms of the secrets in the dungeon yet, so I don't know. But typically that's how it runs. You find a secret because we ran it blind, and every secret that we found like every door that we found that we couldn't open yet, all those doors and all those secret chests and all that stuff. We found that stuff on our own, and that was very rewarding to do that. The action itself was rewarding, but the rewards you get aren't really that rewarding. Like, and all the drops that I'm getting, I mean, it was our first run. We did it blind. Now the game can't know that we did it blind, but we did it blind, and it was our first run. And everything I got one sword, which was cool, but I dismantled it because there's probably going to be red borders or whatever for it, so I just got rid of it, whatever. Either way, I got everything else. All the other drops were armor, and it was all like 53 power or 53 whatever. And I was like, that's not good. Like, why am I getting this? And so that's the type of stuff, like the content is incredible. The rewards are always bad, debatably bad. And that's what always bothers me about that, because it's not a secret. And so, but I do think that going back to the whole like thing is, I think that from a dev standpoint, it's very bad that only 12% are playing their content. But from a player standpoint, it's good on both sides of players. For the elitist, you feel accomplished. And for the non-elitist, except for feeling sad that you don't have friends to play with, you might feel a sense of you're reaching. You always have something to strive for, right? So that's cool.
Yeah, but with this in-game fire team finder, they'll now be able to hopefully get into a lot of that content, right?
Yeah, but I think that yes. But the problem with and I'm sure that the other MMOs have this issue. I can only speak for, like, I played Elder Scrolls Online for quite a bit. I played New World for quite a bit. New World wasn't that bad because there was a lot of other MMO people that came to it, and ESO was okay. I didn't play any raids in ESO, but I played some of the bigger dungeons, and it was okay. But I've heard this horror stories of World of Warcraft where they have finders and stuff, and it's like they you get people that just aren't good, or even in your own raid team that your clan or whatever, they're just people you don't really know, and then they're not very good either. And so Destiny, clearly requires knowledge and all this stuff, and I think it's gonna just end the same way. But it's gonna end the same way as it does on Discord when you go search for fire teams, except for now it's in-home, in-app, in-game. So that's ultimately better because people were going to search for other means to do it anyway, and the people that weren't going to search are now have access to it. My only issue is community. The Destiny community can be one of two things: incredible, probably the best, most wholesome community you've ever seen, or the most toxic piece of garbage trash ever.
Toxic.
There's nothing in between. There's nothing in between.
Yeah.
And I've even seen the most helpful of Sherpas get angry and leave at the dumbest of people, so
yeah, it will be interesting to see what they did the beta test of it, I think on like Friday or something, or Thursday. It will be interesting to see what kind of the stats they got from that. I don't know if we'll end up seeing it, but like how many of those raids actually got completed that used the fire team finder. That'd be one I'd be really interested in. If it's above like 30-40%, I think that's honestly probably a win.
I'm going to be honest. I think what it does is I think there's going to be some negatives, and I think there's going to be some positives. But I think ultimately, the positives are going to outweigh the negatives, because the negatives are going to be, hey, man, you don't know what you're doing. Get the fuck out of here, whatever, and that whatever. But then the other people are going to be like, you don't know how to do, you know what? No big deal. We'll show you. And even if they don't show them and they just run them through it, at least that person now has done it. So even though they're not good at it, and even though they didn't learn anything because the guys just kind of ran them through it, they're going to learn visually. So they're going to be like, oh, well, and so then their next group, they're going to be like, oh, I haven't done the bridge encounter, or I didn't do the bridge encounter myself, but I've seen it done, so, and it starts to, I think ultimately it's healthier for the game. I think it'll actually be a positive thing on the community as a whole, if I'm being honest, totally honest. I think that's, I think it's a good and a bad thing, but ultimately a better thing than it is a bad.
Yeah, more good's going to come from it than bad.
Absolutely.
Overall, it'll be a net positive. I agree with that. And I think that's, I think that's going to be one way that can maybe start getting people to stick around longer. Because, yeah, if you were a new player that came in and just did like playlist strikes, yeah, you're gonna probably fall up and be like, all right, cool. It's fun, but like whatever, you know. But if they can go, oh, I want to try out like this dungeon or this raid or this whatever, like, then I think that's going to go a long way in keeping players around. Like if you can get people hooked on to raiding, dude, like they're in.
They're definitely in. That's what I'm saying is like I want to have so many of my friends come play Destiny with us, but it's if you can't get them into a raid and you can't, it's hard to get them immediately into a raid unless you do an older one, and then they still don't have like good guns, but you know, or whatever. But they're definitely hooked.
I think that's another thing that once Final Shape comes out, I feel like is going to be kind of one of the final pieces to this puzzle is their whole fire team power, where, you know, if you or Pasta or whoever has been playing nonstop and you guys are leveled up, it's like, boom, cool, we can run whatever activity because at least one of us is that level. They already talked about it where like you're...
Yeah. I actually like that. I thought it was going to happen this season. But I know that it's going to happen in the future. I remember they talked about that, and I think that is genius. I think it's a little weird because it takes away from the personal a little bit, but it helps the group, and I think that ultimately is a healthier environment for Destiny. And just kind of like touching on what Rogue said, to make a certain attempt. That's what I was saying too. The thing is like, even this is why I think it's even good, even if you don't finish it. Like, say you get in there and you have the worst of the worst 5 people. Like you're the veteran, but you have 5 new people. They're just running around screaming obscenities, and you're just like, what is happening? At least these people that, you know, they get to try it, and they even if they don't finish it, they're the only time that they're wasting is like they're wasting a little bit of time, but that's what they were going to try and do anyway. So at least they get to kind of experience it a little bit. And so where if they didn't have friends, they might not have. It is aspirational, and they might not even have friends to even have tried it, even let alone get through it all the way. So at least they have a chance. So. For sure.
You know what? When Fire Team Finder comes out full, I'm gonna do my part. I'm gonna set up teaching runs of raids like once a month or something, just to see even if I can get like 3 or 4 people to just try out a new raid who have never raided before. Hey, I think that's a net positive. That's 5 more people that, you know, might stick around.
I think that's how it's gonna slowly climb the ranks of being a net positive. Yeah, I agree with you.
That's awesome.
So yeah. There's that. That's all. That's I mean, that's most of our Destiny stuff. We talked about the pushback. We talked about the dungeon. We talked about the Fire Team Finder. They're making good moves. All in all,
yes.
Despite the layoffs, they are making good moves. So hopefully,
funnily enough, since the layoffs, I feel like they've been making pretty solid. You know, they've been communicating more, which is weird because they fired a bunch of the communications team.
You know what? I thought about that, and I don't want to put anyone on blast because I really like the people that they fired. I follow a lot of them on Twitter. But
it is weird, isn't it? How like
it is weird, but I think that the thing is what they're doing is they're communicating where they need to and not random stuff. Because it's one thing to be at this giant company and be like, hey, what's your guys' favorite gun today or whatever. No one it's fun, but no one cares. But when the system goes down. And you immediately go, guys, we know we messed up. Sorry, we're going to fix it. That's what we need. Because a lot of times we would go in the dark in the past. But since around like the time of the crafting, we've been getting nonstop updates about exactly what's happening. I saw you tweet about it, the bundle that they took down. That new starter bundle, that was trash. And then they immediately took it down and then immediately tweeted about it. And they were like, hey, we understand that you guys didn't like that. Our bad. That is amazing. Accountability and direct approach to your consumers. That's genius.
Yes. If they can keep up that type of communication, it'll go a long way in like repairing bridges with a lot of those players, I bet. And also just making people who are still around in the game like just kind of feel better as well. Even if it's stuff that doesn't necessarily affect every single one of us, it still goes a long way in knowing that you feel like when something that affects you happens, it's going to get communicated about. And that gives a lot more like trust in like, hey, if I run into a problem or if the community's running into a problem, it's going to get addressed. And I think that goes a very long way versus like, just these random kind of like vague blasts and stuff like that.
I agree with that fully.
Good old Bungie.
Yep. We can glaze over a little bit too, and maybe chat would want to participate in this if they haven't already. The Game Awards prep talk. I mean, we have Game Awards this week,
Oh yeah, man.
this coming week. So it's the Game Awards was December 7th. I think it's Thursday.
Thursday, I believe, right?
Yeah, Thursday night. I also wanted to ask you, do you want to do a watch party? Even whether
100%.
do we want to record it, or do we want to wait till
Sure.
Saturday to discuss it, or are we going to stream it together on here?
I say let's stream it together on here. Let's record it, and then if we feel like we need to have a podcast that weekend, we can, or we can do it all that day. I guess we can kind of play it by ear. See how, I don't know how crazy the Game Awards are going to be this year.
I think they start relatively late. Is that okay for you on a Thursday?
Yeah, that'll be fine. Let's see, what time does it start?
I think it's 8 p.m. my time or something like that.
Oh, perfect. That's like 6 p.m. my time. Yeah, we're fine. We're cruising.
Pasta, that meme was so funny. Or not, it's not funny because actually that guy is becoming like this weird, dangerous. We don't have to get into it, but that guy ended up becoming famous.
Oh yeah, the guy that came up on when they were doing the Elden Ring award and stuff.
I definitely not that our platform is very big. I don't want to platform that guy though, because his takes are the hottest of the hot, man, and I don't even want to.
Yeah.
He went from a meme lord to a hyper red pill guy, and it is very not good.
I can't even find a time for it. It says December 7th. But yeah, I'll be there. It's one of the biggest nights of gaming of the year. I gotta be there, I gotta be there to watch it live.
So okay. So then let's go to the Game Awards website real quick. And if chat, you guys want to go to this too, if you guys got some time, definitely recommend, because so normally, as Ford and I have talked about, the Game Awards are chosen by kind of the academy of the panel themselves. Yeah, so not necessarily by the viewers. It's like 20% viewers, 80% the gaming industry. Now, they added something this year called the player's voice, which is basically 100% the gamers voting. So what you can do is go to gameawards.com, thegameawards.com, or Google the Game Awards, go to player's voice, and then click view categories, because round 2 is available now, but you can vote for let's see.
The interesting thing that I found about the player's choices, I remember, some people came out when the original Game Awards Game of the Year nominees got announced, and they're like, oh, like this got shafted, this got snubbed, whatever, all that kind of stuff. And then you look at the player choice that like through the rounds, and it's basically like the same nominees climbing. I'm like,
right,
look, guys, like, I know you wanted this one random game to make it, but people be liking these 6 games. I still think Resident Evil being the weird thing is even Resident Evil was up there. So even the players are like, oh yeah, Resident Evil. I'm like, come on, guys, it's a remake. Come on, let's give us something new. But overall, I'm very excited. Game Awards obviously always has like big announcements and stuff too. So I'm very excited to see what
I think we get a couple drops there. Yeah, I think we get a couple good drops. You know what I'm excited to see, because last year, I think it was at the game, or no, maybe it was at E3 this year. Or was it E3 this year, or was it Game Awards last year? I can't remember. But Extremely OK Games, the makers of Celeste.
Oh yeah, that was Game Awards. Yeah,
yeah. So Earthblade was the game that I'm not a fan of the Metroidvania style, but I have full faith in that company. Maddie is incredible. Maddie's a genius, as well as her other coworkers. And wow, I can't wait for that game. It looks fantastic. And I mean,
do we, on that same vein, do we get a Hollow Knight Silk Song release date announcement at Game Awards? Does it finally happen?
We probably could, to be honest. I think with the rise of indie, and then also what we're going to talk about to be indie, I think we might get like 1 or 2 AAAs. I think we get some indies. I think that's going to be a big point there. I think that because I think that we have like 3 indie categories here, right? So I think that we get an announcement betwixt those.
Okay.
Not really much else to talk about until we get to there on Thursday, but
yeah, I'm very excited though. We'll be here. We'll be streaming it. We'll be having a great time.
Yeah, I'm gonna get a new setup for this so we can like put us more like smaller in the corner, and then we'll have the main screen in the middle.
Oh man, I hope there's at least one or two things that really makes me pop off. You know, that's always my favorite. Like these, you know, everyone, you know, I hear people say sometimes they're like, oh, it's just like, you know, we're just watching commercials, and I'm like, yeah, but they're really fucking cool commercials.
Hey, yeah, nothing.
Cool
I'm gonna tell you right now, dude. A lot of people will be like, don't buy into the hype or this and that. I'm a hype guy.
Yeah, dude, I'm all about the hype.
Like when I saw years ago at I don't remember, I think it was at E3, it's like 2015, 16 or something. They announced Halo 5, and you just see this guy. They didn't say anything about anything, and they just see this. You just see this guy with an Assassin's Creed style cloak, and he's
the poncho,
and he's walking through the desert, just trucking it through the desert, and then you see this giant worm just jump out of the sand and just scream at him, and it blows the hood back, and it's Master freaking Chief. And I cannot tell you, in that moment, I lost my freaking mind, dude. I was in so much hype. First thing that comes to mind is the Smash trailer. That too, man.
Smash trailers are always hit really well too.
Those that was one of those was at no, it wasn't at Evo. One of them wasn't at E3. The Smash Ultimate one. Whenever they just came up with the ball with the circle, the Smash logo with the cross,
with the fire,
and all of everyone in the group was just like, oh! It was wild. That was an amazing one too. That was so hype. I mean, that game is fantastic too, so it lived up to the hype.
I'm so excited.
Absolutely.
But I don't want to get too excited because, you know, who knows? It could be a weaker year. We've had weaker years for announcements before, but I don't know. This year's been pretty great, so it'd be cool to get some pretty great announcements.
Okay. So we got that out of the way. Couple small things I want to talk about. I'd never played a Dragon's Dogma game. I'm sure you have.
I played the first one, not a ton though. I'm definitely not an expert. But
I saw a little bit of Dragon's Dogma 2. The release date got confirmed, and I've seen a little bit on it. Holy crap. It looks incredible. Dude,
I'm telling you, like, people need to start putting in a lot of respect when they say the name Capcom, all right? They need to start respecting that. Capcom is just
I respect Capcom. Since I was a kid, I've loved Capcom.
Yeah, Capcom is like, they're in, you know, as the kids would say, they're Duffy right now, all right? They're releasing banger after banger, you know? You've got, obviously, all the Resident Evil remakes have been killer. All the original Resident Evil games have been killer. Exoprimal was awesome, for me at least, you know.
Oh, that's Capcom.
That's Capcom, yeah.
Oh, nice.
Exoprimal, the GOAT, you know? Game of the year, 2023, Exoprimal. You know, Street Fighter 6 has been lauded as one of the greatest fighting games of all time. Like, Capcom is in their bag right now.
Yeah.
And I think Dragon's Dogma is going to be no exception. I think it's going to be phenomenal. Dragon's Dogma 1, I know, is like kind of that more cult classic. And when I played it, it was definitely kind of gave off that vibe where this is kind of janky. It almost gives off the vibe of like way back in the day, way back in the day. I remember me and my buddies, we went to the local game store and we picked up this really janky, weird PS3 game called Demon's Souls. And it was very odd and weird, but we kind of loved it.
I love how
led into
Dark Souls and all the From Software bangers that they've gotten.
Hey, but it's so funny when you go back, like if you play that original Demon's Souls,
I have it. It is very bad.
It's
but then again, I don't really like those kind of games, so it's even worse for me.
Yeah, it's very weird, you know, and so like I think that this could be a similar situation where like Dragon's Dogma is really weird, but Dragon's Dogma 2, everything I've seen about it, I'm like, damn, they're kind of taking a lot of what they did in that first game and they're turning it up. They're turning it up to 11, and so I'm very excited. I imagine that is going to review extremely well and also just I'm hoping it's a good coming out party for it because obviously Dragon's Dogma 1 did not sell a ton. And it was definitely more of like a kind of passion project.
Very niche too from the gamers. I heard some people that were really in the sticks that really loved it. And I always wanted to play it, but I never got into it. But this one has my interest for sure. And Pasta says GTA 6 too big for the Game Awards, apparently. I mean, I agree with that. To be honest, I would think that the Game Awards would have to pay GTA to advertise it.
Yeah.
I'm serious.
Straight up, GTA is so big that like They could just create a national holiday at this point as GTA Day and be like, this is when we're going to announce the thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
It is
I
way
would,
too big. The Game Awards would literally have to pay them to put it there. Like, normally you pay the Super Bowl for the commercial or whatever. Like, no, they would have to pay them because it's just how it is. Like, they're just so big. And that's another thing we can kind of gloss over, but we don't have anything to say yet. But I do want to. We can talk about that trailer around the Game Awards time because it'll have already happened. But and
I wouldn't be shocked if there's like a 20-30 second stinger or something
for sure.
Game Awards for GTA, like, oh, go check out the trailer, even though literally every single person who's watching the Game Awards will have already seen the trailer.
Yeah. And that kind of goes into our one of our other smaller topics that I wanted to say, just something I wanted to kind of top us off with GTA 6. It's about to have the world premiere in a couple of days. Mm-hmm. And like I have written here for my notes, it's something I thought about last night, and I wanted to say it here just to be completely fair to the game. It's one of the best games of all time, franchises of all time, because if you look back at since 3, because 1 and 2, were the isometric or the top-down styles. Yeah. But if you go from 3, Vice City, San Andreas, 4, and 5, they're all pretty much the same game, just the better version of itself. And so they've always been honest with us. I can't imagine GTA 6 is anything less than GTA 5. I can't. I don't think we're going to get anything less than what we've ever asked for. I can't imagine anything more than what we've ever gotten in GTA 5, because GTA 5, I would say, is the perfect game. I don't think it's for everyone at all times, because I don't play it consistently, but I have hundreds and hundreds of hours into it across multiple platforms, 360, One, and PC. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I just think that they've done such a good job. Like, it's always great. It's always a good time.
Yeah. I mean, I 100% agree with you. There's no way GTA 6 is bad. I do still think about what is kind of the new thing they can bring.
That's what I'm saying, is I don't know what they're going to show us.
Yeah, I really don't know. I know we briefly touched on it last time we talked about GTA 6, but yeah, that's the big thing that I'm interested in seeing, is what is the thing that makes this 6 and not just GTA 5 Part 2, essentially, right?
Go ahead, sorry.
Because GTA 5 obviously introduced like all the online aspect, which I think is like kind of encapsulated within GTA 5, at least the breadth of how big it was. Because obviously I know GTA 4 had online as well. So I'm very interested to see how they are going to push
GTA 4 didn't really have the activities that 5 does. It did have online, but there was nothing to do. Now 5 has everything to do, except for, even in the casinos, though, I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, you can't really play like blackjack or poker with your friends. Not that that's a selling point, because we could just go play Prominence Poker or something on a different game, but it is fun to be able to live and breathe in the world. So if you're playing a game that feels real, in terms of, like, obviously it's not real, but like, hey, we could all hop in this plane together. Hey, we could all hop in this car together. Hey, we can all go do a heist together. Okay, let's all go to the casino and actually play the game. So, like, it's just little mini games, but I think it would be fun, because like Undead Nightmare, Red Dead Redemption, did the same thing. You could actually play. At first, you couldn't play with your friends, playing like Liar's Dice and stuff like that. But then in Undead Nightmare, you could. So hopefully, GTA will implement more co-op stuff other than just the heists. I would love to see that. I don't know what else that could entail other than poker and stuff, but add more stuff like that, and I'm happy.
Yeah, I just remembered what we talked about last time we talked about it, was the whole role-playing aspect, and that kind of being possibly the thing they can add that is like the
more implemented in-game versus mods. Yeah,
versus the mods, since they bought that team that did that whole mod, they bought it. Yeah. So I do think that, I wonder if, almost to your point, I do wonder if that comes at launch, or if that's like
we're still working on it.
6 months to a year after we launch, that's when you're going to get the big role playing.
To be honest, I mean, unless they're wanting to sell the game, like, hey, here's the game, here is the campaign, and then here is online, and then we'll give you 6 months to, because that has kind of been their business model, hold back a little bit until you finish something and then get into it later. But I think that I don't think that they have a reason to hold it back unless they really want you to experience it, or they're going to charge for it. So if they're not going to charge for it, I don't think that they need to hold it back. And I think that might be why they're holding back the release date in the first place. Because, I mean, what could take so long to make GTA 6? I'm not saying that it's easy to make a game by any means, but GTA 5 is the model. I mean, you just remake the game because it is already so good. I mean, how much more could change besides, because we already have so much freedom, mods and in-house. Now the in-house, or now the mods are going to be in-house, and then we can also role play a little bit more. You know what I mean? Like, I think that they already have it all in the bag.
Maybe somebody in chat can tell me, because I didn't play Red Dead Redemption 2. But did online launch like day one, or was that like after a month or something they launched the online?
Red Dead 1 was like a couple months later. I don't know about 2.
Was a couple months later. Yeah,
I'm
curious about 2.
Well, Red Dead 1, you could play online together at first, but you couldn't do anything. It was same as GTA 4, right? You couldn't really do anything, but then you could just like ride around in horses and do like little almost like horde mode style stuff where people would come at you. But then you could play mini games together when Undead Nightmare DLC came out.
Okay.
And then Rookie says, yeah.
It was a while after for Red Dead Redemption 2. So I could see it that seems to fit with the cadence
their
of
model.
Rockstar's, even with their more recent games. Because I knew that was how it was for the older games. So I'm like, I haven't played a recent Rockstar game, so I don't know if that's changed. Right. Also, I did want to bring up, I totally missed this. Rookie also said, I would love a new Monster Hunter at the Game Awards, which I am 1000% there with you, Rookie.
Me too, because I want to start over because I didn't. So I played I played World and I loved it, except for the forced cutscene watching and the forced splitting of the party. So if you and I were together, for people that don't know, Monster Hunter World, incredible game, so fun, hyper recommend. Except for if you haven't already beaten the game. I would recommend beating the game and then playing with your friends, because if you haven't beat the game, say me and Ford wanted to play together, we'd play together for a little bit and we'd do a hunt, and then they would kick us out and make us watch a cutscene separately, forcefully, and then we could come back together, do another hunt, and then same thing, and keep getting kicked out and coming back. And that was ridiculous. Apparently Rise fixed that. It's not like that in Rise. But Rise came out for Switch first, and then other platforms, right? And that's, I didn't want to be behind on that. I heard Rise is incredible, but I didn't want to be behind. So give me another Monster Hunter. We'll start over, and I'll give you another shot, because I want to play it so bad. It was so fun.
You were like 100% in the same boat as like my other friends, like Agent and everything, where they same thing. We got it and we were having a great time, and then it started doing that whole like, oh, we got to watch cutscene and then get you in. Then like, if it wasn't for that, guarantee I'd have like 3 other friends right now, like mega into Monster Hunter.
Same.
But yeah, I would absolutely love a new Monster Hunter, especially if it's the World sequel. Rise is great. I've been playing Monster Hunter since the PS2 original one, so like I'm in there, but I would love a World 2 to like really kind of get us into that next gen Monster Hunter. And it's like, I think it's the 30th anniversary or 20th anniversary probably. That makes more sense timeline wise, but let me get in there.
Something that I love I didn't have this in our notes, but now that we're talking about it, I want to talk about this a little, just real quick. One thing that Monster Hunter does, and this isn't I guess we're talking about a new Monster Hunter. This is just something that the Monster Hunter already does and has been doing for a long time that I think games like Destiny used to do, but doesn't anymore. And that's use the gear from the people you beat.
Okay.
Monster Hunter, if you hunt Nergigante or Rathalos or whoever, right? You hunt them. You skin their wings. You take their wings. You make a chest armor out of it, so it has wings with it or whatever. Or you take their talons and you make freaking bear claw armor out of it, or not armor, but weapons out of it. So you slay this giant bear. You take his claws and make claws out of them. Or you make a sword out of a barbed Rathalos tail. Like that is amazing. And it changed the way you looked, and it changed the elements, the elemental damage, it changed the stats. That is a beautiful thing. And Destiny 1 did that. Destiny 2 does not do that. And it makes me so infuriated that that's the case. And not just Destiny, but other games don't do that. You don't necessarily craft them in Zelda, but you kind of get armor that has a theme to it, but you don't craft them. Sure. But in things that you did craft, so Zelda's like halfway there. Destiny used to be there, but games need to do that. Would reward you for what you do. I mean, Monster, dude, that they figured it out, man. I can't tell you how much I love that.
Yeah, the armor and the weapons that you get are the trophy essentially of accomplishment, which
And
makes
you
it so that
wear it.
every time you see it, you're like, oh yeah, I accomplished that, which is why I can now go beat up 100 more of these monsters with the armor that I made off of their dead friends, basically.
Right. And so if you're facing a fire monster, well, you slayed 7 toads and skinned those 7 toads, and they give you like this water barrier to them because you have like thick water skinned hide or whatever. Now you can resist fire a little bit. Like that type of stuff is a beautiful thing in a game, and that's what I loved about Monster Hunter World so much. And like Destiny 1, whenever you kill the scions, one of the hunter cloaks you got their scion cloak.
Yeah,
and like that's cool,
that,
man. I want to see more of that type of stuff, and they should also have the ability of those things. And like, I don't know, it's just kind of stuff that I love, and I wish. And just to, we don't have to dive too much because we don't even know if there's going to be a Monster Hunter announced or anything like that. But if there is, that's something that I've always loved about Monster Hunter that I think that I wish other games would implement to a degree.
I mean, we're right at the timeline wise, based off their previous releases. We're right where like a new Monster Hunter would fit in, and Monster Hunter doesn't need much advertising. They can announce at a Game Awards and be like, "Guess what, guys? It's coming out in March
tomorrow
or something." yeah, tomorrow. You know what's the most important Monster Hunter thing that's happening though? The Monster Hunter collaboration pack in Exoprimal comes out in January. Let's go, baby.
I'm going to go back through all these videos and make an Exoprimal slip-in montage from Ford.
Man.
I think Ford could slip in Exoprimal into every topic, and I love this. I love this arc for you.
Game of the year, bro. Game of the year. Best game ever.
Okay, so then so we have just hit over an hour. I want to hit 2 more small things, and then we can get to the biggest topic of the day.
Sounds good.
So I just wanted to glaze over Grand Poo World 3. Just a small mention. It was made by one guy. It's a ROM hack for Mario World. And one guy created an absolute banger masterpiece. I've only watched like 3 levels of it so far, but here's how good it was. He released it. He was going to release it a week before Mario RPG came out. He instead needed a little bit more time. I think he kind of did this on purpose, but he needed a little bit more time, so he released it on the day of Mario RPG. And Mario RPG had less viewers on Twitch than Grand Poo World 3.
Damn, that's actually pretty crazy. That's an accomplishment. Holy.
Yeah. So good on you, Barb, for that. I highly doubt you're watching this, but great job, dude.
I'm gonna have to I already looked it up. Let me save that. I'm gonna check some of that out because I know you've been wanting me to look at a lot of those ROM hacks. So I'm definitely gonna take a look at that.
I think at the very least you'll be able to appreciate the level design.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, especially if it's attached to Super Mario World. I mean, come on, you know, that's one of the best Marios. So I'm sure it'll look and run fantastically.
So that's all I wanted to touch on that, just to say good job, Barb, because in a world where these titles and Nintendo can crush you, you crushed Nintendo on that day. So great job.
Damn, what bragging rights, am I right?
For sure. And then the other small thing I wanted to mention is that Bethesda finally responded, and you know me, the Starfield hater. I keep seeing on Twitter, and some people defend this game to their death. You would think that it was one of their firstborn. It's crazy because it's not a good game. It's mid at best. It is a 5 out of 10 at the highest, in my opinion. Especially coming from such an astute company as Bethesda and renowned classics such as the Elder Scrolls series and Fallout. But also Fallout TV show. They have an announced date, April 2024.
I saw that. Didn't watch the trailer yet, but I'm sure it'll be fine.
Yeah. So Bethesda responds to the planets being empty. A lot of comments were saying that the planets, myself included, planets were empty. Not very good game. They responded and said that they are not boring. Okay. That is what they said. They are not boring. And I think that Bethesda even responding to those comments is a bit pathetic.
Yeah.
You don't have... So look, the thing is, if you... Responding to a negative thing in your games that's like consensus, that's fine. But if someone says, hey, this is not fun, and then you respond with... Instead of responding with, well, wait... or do more, or in DLC will give you more. Just this is going to be a 10-year brand, right? Nope. They said they're not boring. That is like you're arguing like a child. And someone's like, that's not fun. You could just ignore the hater or respond and say, nuh-uh.
Look, I got two things on this for you right now. One, I love it. I love hater HP. It's a rare sight, but I love hater HP. It is one of my favorite things is when you get into that mode. Second, look, man, it's an indie game. It's an indie company, you know?
Okay, and that brings us to our next topic. And the final topic of today. What is an indie game? Do you guys know what an indie game is? Because we're going to teach you today, and we're going to make a solidified damage check definition of what an indie game is, because apparently the internet doesn't know anymore.
Okay, so
where does it start, though? Is it the tweet that started it all kind of deal?
You know, actually, yeah, let me pull up that tweet, because that tweet did irreparable
and the
damage
responses.
Yeah, man, it did irreparable damage to me. I'm never going to be the same person after that tweet. Hold on, I gotta dig through it. I don't tweet that much, so it shouldn't take that long. Yeah, see, it's barely even down there. All right, so one of the responses to the whole Dave the Diver being nominated for Indie Game. You know, this is where this all starts. Dave the Diver being nominated for Indie Game, when it's definitely not. Made by Nexon, or made by Mint Rocket, who is owned by Nexon, was created by Nexon. This isn't like a purchase thing. It's not like they bought an indie company. No, they were made. It is a division of Nexon. The boss of Dave of Mint Rocket came out and said, "We are not an indie game." And if you go look at Mint Rocket's next game, it's like a third person over the shoulder, like action extraction shooter that looks mega AAA. And so people started arguing like about the semantics of like, what is an indie game? You know, is it budget? Is it style? Is it all that kind of stuff? And there was this tweet that came up where someone says, I understand both sides of the argument, but I do feel the term best indie game is more of a look and feel these days than a semantic over definition. The reply was, then Hi-Fi Rush should have been nominated as an indie game, but that would have been questionable. And that person responds back and said, I call Hi-Fi Rush an indie, to be honest. And at that point, my brain short-circuited, because Hi-Fi Rush is literally published by the biggest company in video games right now, which is Microsoft, who just got done buying Activision Blizzard. And so we gotta fix this. We gotta figure out what is up with the term indie. So I'm gonna ask you first, HP. To you, what is the definition of an indie game? What makes you feel like a game is indie?
See, then
there's no wrong answers.
There's definitely not a wrong answer. So I'm always set myself aside from this topic. I'm always under the impression that semantics do matter. Now, you could always be like, semantics, it doesn't, because typically when people say, semantics, that means that it doesn't matter. But I typically mean, I always think of it as sometimes I'm in that camp, but most times I went to like I'm getting a little argumentative here. Sometimes I'm in that camp, but most times we have words. We are the animals of the animal kingdoms that have formulated a very complex language. So let's freaking use it, people.
Yes.
So, but that being said, indie by definition means independent, which is a very broad spectrum. But
so real quick pause. Do you consider nowadays, at least, because I do agree that is what the
initial term.
Definition, the initial term indie was short for independent. Do you feel like that is the same thing now?
I think feel like technically no, that's where I was going to get to. So technically, yes, it still does mean that, because that's what it did mean. So it does mean that. However, in my eyes, indie meant kind of self-published, but because there's a point where you kind of switch into a multi-million-dollar industry or multi-million-dollar company. So even if you're self-published and you have millions of dollars, I mean, it's probably a little bit. I mean, we're Straight Cup Studios, right? We have a small company, small game that we're barely have any money for, but we're slowly working towards our game. We were supposed to have it out by this year. Some things happened. We'll probably have it out by next year, maybe. Like, we'll see how it goes. But we don't have millions of dollars rather invested into it. If we did, it would have been out yesterday. You know what I mean? And better than what it is going to be. There's I personally, what I want to see as an indie game, I wish that it could separate from the word independent and be labor of love, small funded, and under a threshold. I would say probably under 500K, maybe even less than that, 100K maybe, invested into it. Because not a lot of people have, I mean, I could see a small company of 2 people investing 100K into a game.
Sure. So
500K, maybe not, but 100K easily. I mean, Celeste, I can't imagine it cost much more than that. You know what I mean? It couldn't have cost them that much, except for labor. If you want to, calculating labor is a little bit different because it's like, yeah, of course you're going to pay yourself and stuff like that. But
yeah, you still got to pay bills and everything. So the biggest thing I'm pulling from that, it sounds like budget is kind of category.
Budget is my main thing, and then team size. And I also, and this is arbitrary, but I want to also throw in, this is so arbitrary, but I want to throw in intentions / labor of love.
Okay.
Right? Because something like Celeste is clearly a passion project. The original Blizzard, when it was 5 people, and the original Bungie, when it was 7 people, those are labor of loves, like the original Marathon, the original Warcraft type stuff. Like all these, like whenever they were smaller, you could tell they put a lot of love into these games. Now, I don't think that that's indie, but I think that that's part of what I want to see if we not necessarily change the definition of indie, but change the word.
Okay. Sorry, I'm looking at a team size real quick just to kind of see. So budget and team size are kind of like the big stick outs.
Yeah, but at that point I would, yeah, exactly. And that's like with a small asterisk, but I think that I want to shift the name too, because I don't like that it involves semantics, because indie is short for independent. And like they said, Baldur's Gate 3 technically, by that definition, by being independent, is indie, but it's not indie by what we're giving prestigious awards for today. So because otherwise Baldur's Gate would literally sweep the Game Awards completely.
So here's the interesting thing is that with indie, you have things like indie publishers, right? But that kind of goes against the term indie, right?
Elaborate.
Like for example, like Devolver Digital, they've gotten bigger now over, I think, the past like 3 or 4 years. They've started like having more like AA size games. But like when Devolver Digital first came around, they are an indie publisher. You know, these are the guys that did like Cult of the Lamb most recently. Inscription was another one they did very recently. Wizard with a Gun is the one they did recently. But back, you know, even like 3, 4, 5 years ago, Devolver Digital was mostly doing like smaller indie titles and publishing those indie titles. So if I'm an indie studio, you know, if I'm Straight Cup Studios, if I'm us, and we end up getting a publishing deal with Devolver Digital, for example, do we then become not indie? Because we're not technically independent anymore. And that's where I feel like the word indie has shifted away from that meaning of being, you know, it is etymology wise, it is a short abbreviation for independent. But I do feel like even in music, you know, from like 20, 30 years ago, the rise of like indie record labels, indie film companies, like those things inherently now kind of push against the term of what indie means.
This is coming to an early conclusion, but we could change it from indie to indue. Bear with me. So we got
okay. I'm listening.
So we got because it used to be independent, but then what these people, because they go from independent to staying independent but becoming industry. So you got indie and indue.
So starting independent because
they're still independent, right? I mean, because what you're the other way around, right? You're saying with Straight Cup, our game company would be independent until we get bought by a publisher? No, or
Well, I
not
guess
bought,
that's
but
the question. Yeah, if we, let's say we don't get bought, but we just publish our game through Devolver Digital, or even like Team 17 is like another one, like some of those smaller publishers. Us getting them published, do we now become non-indie, or is it only once we're like owned? I guess, if we got bought for X amount of money and we were now owned by Devolver Digital or owned by Team 17
and
or whoever.
that's why it's so hard to give a hard definition without just changing the word. And I think that's the conclusion we're going to need to come to, is just getting rid of this word and using a new one. Not getting rid of it, using this word still, but this is more in compliance with another word, because
adding a word.
Because we as humans love to categorize things, and the way that I would, what specific name would you give something for people to say labors of love and passion project? Because like the people at Bungie, for example, they're not indie anymore, but they still, each individual are putting their heart and soul into the game.
Look, man, all I'm saying is I'd call Destiny 2 an indie project.
Small indie company.
Small indie company, dude. What could they do?
So I think my contingent is always budget and size, team size.
Okay, so that seems like the most important.
So if they get bought, if they get bought or published by a bigger company, I think they can still, because what does that mean? So let's set up a scenario. You, okay, you, and Sirens, we are Straight Cup Studios. We release our game, but we get it published. What does that mean? We get it published by, let's just say Devolver in this case. Devolver publishes our game. What's the next move? We release it. So
I guess just to make sure I understand the question, you're saying like, what's the next move as far as like us? Like we release the game, and then what do we do next, or what is Devolver doing next?
What is the game doing next? Like what is it? So it's released on Steam under the name Straight Cup Studios as developer. Publisher is Devolver Digital. That means that they gave us money to publish this game under their name. So it's more advertising, it's bigger, but we three still made it.
Yes,
so
correct.
By that definition, yes, we're still indie.
Okay.
I think so. Or what I would call indie.
So let's say then for our next game, Devolver from the get is like, hey, we want to be a part of this. Then we're no longer indie, is what I'm getting from this scenario, right? So like if Devolver said, "Oh,
so then do we add timing to the contingent?" Because we would still be the three working on it, but we have funds. Is that what you're saying?
We theoretically have funds, and then with funds, possibly more team. Maybe we're like, "Oh, last time we didn't have an X, Y, and Z person, let's bring one on," or something like that. The core of the team is still us, but we can bring on more people. At that point, do we stop being indie?
And this kind of like oxymoronic statement, to me at least it seems that way, is why there needs to be a new term. Because like you said, Dave the Diver, because a lot of people think it's what it looks like, and that's absolutely wrong.
Yes. I think, let's actually talk about that right now. The whole aesthetic argument that indie's an aesthetic, no. If you're a pixel game, doesn't mean that you're now an indie. Because I actually want to get into this a little bit, because I feel like that's a very dangerous precedent to set for the industry. Because one thing that's going to start happening over the next few years, probably over the course of this decade, is you're going to start seeing bigger companies releasing smaller games. Because now these larger games that they're making are taking so long to make that now they're going to have interstitial, like small games where they're like, hey, the 200 person team at, let's say Naughty Dog or something is off working on mega title, Last of Us Part 3. We want something in between that. So we're going to send 20 of
Crash Bandicoot 2D.
Yeah, we're going to send 20 of you guys to go work on this small, like kind of, title that we're going to just release interstitially, Last of Us D-Make or something. It's a pixelated Last of Us 2D Metroidvania or something like that.
Right.
And people would look at that with the whole aesthetic argument. You would look at that and say, oh, Naughty Dog made an indie game. And it's like, bro, no, that's Naughty Dog, one of the biggest companies in the, like, biggest gaming companies in the world. Are you kidding me?
So aesthetic needs to be thrown out the window.
Yeah, aesthetic, and the problem with that too is as that's going to happen more and more, as we're even seeing with Dave the Diver, that's going to push out the spot for actual indies.
I agree with that. And that's why I think that's why we need to start splitting these semantics up. That's why semantics do matter. And not just in this case, in the world, but that's why we made language, and that's why humans love to categorize things. So I think things like that do still need a category, because you can't be like, oh, game of the year? Well, Naughty Dog made let's say this 2D game, and then Naughty Dog also made what's the other what'd you say? The
Last of Us Part 3.
What's the not Last of Us Part what's the
Last of Us demake?
No, they make the Tomb Raider style kind of game. What's that game called?
Oh, Uncharted.
They also, I was like, I know they make a big game, but I can't think of the name of it. Yeah, one of the biggest games of all time. So Uncharted. So like they're making, okay, they made Uncharted this year, and they also made Crash Bandicoot 2D or something like that, right? Or not even Crash Bandicoot, because that's still a home name. But like they made some 2D random game, and then they made Uncharted. They're both Naughty Dog. Do you think even if it's amazing, is it going to be next to Uncharted I mean, sometimes they could be, but very rarely is a game like that. Maybe Celeste has, but there's very few that are going to look like that aesthetically and become a contingent for Game of the Year. That's why we need a different name for it. Because it could be Game of the Year. Sorry, but let's do a different game. It could be like best whatever AAA title, but like. And then you said like even best indie. Should we just say that there's a style? Like, should there be a category for style?
Best aesthetic.
Yeah, but best aesthetic,
I mean, kind of
because yeah, but then you could be in art direction. You got games like Mario Wonder and Zelda, and then also Alan Wake. Like they're vastly different looks. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So it's like, where do we? We love to categorize things, but I feel like this is like such a sliding scale that we don't have. Because like Dave the Diver, you said is not indie. So where does it go? So it wasn't good enough to be nominated for Game of the Year, because anything could be nominated for Game of the Year. But it was under Best Indie. But it's not by definition an indie, but it deserves to be somewhere. So where does it go?
I mean, I don't disagree, because like, yeah, I played Dave the Diver. I had a fantastic time with it. I'm still playing it. I still turn it on every once in a while to play some of it. But I don't know. It's realistically, Dave the Diver could have gotten nominated for a lot of different categories. And so I think barring it from the indie category isn't necessarily saying that they can't be celebrated. It's that they didn't get nominated in the categories that they should have been celebrated. For example, like Dave the Diver it's a sim game. It's a management game. You're running a sushi restaurant. You could have nominated that for best strategy game, and that category was pretty weak this year, and that would have slotted in there just fine. Versus it.
Yeah, but that's why those categories typically suck, or genre definers typically suck, because what is Destiny, for example? Destiny is a shooter, but it's also an RPG. But then that term is it's loosely thrown around, because you're not.
Oh yeah,
you're
term in gaming,
right? So you're playing a role, but you're not really playing a role, but you are playing a role because you're playing the most role of it. You are the Guardian, and then it's like. But everything is determined outcomes. Like, you can't change your outcome. So are you playing the role, or are you living a role? Like, versus, because like there in my opinion, there's a living playing game or living role playing game, and then there's a role playing game. And a role playing game gives you more freedom of choice, like Baldur's Gate. That would be a role playing game to me. But it also goes under the category of strategy. So is it nominated for best strategy and best role playing game? So then with indie games, it's like, is this going to be best indie game? Is it best indie game because it performed the best this year? Or can we put Celeste under, and it's just the fastest one I can think of, under, is like, do we have a best side scroller category? But then you got games like Cocoon, who you would put that under side scrolling, but then it's like, well, then they change up perspective sometimes. Is it side scrolling? I mean, is it? Where do you categorize these things?
I think that's why like the genre category, like platforming is kind of a, or 2D platformer is kind of a genre, but the reality is that platformer is the genre. 2D is like kind of the niche, like honing in of the genre, if that makes sense. And so I think at that point, like with your Destiny example, I think at the end of the day, you would still call it a shooter because at the end of the day, that is what the core.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's a looter shooter, but it's just so like. So is Risk of Rain, but they're vastly different games.
But then, for example, like with Risk of Rain, you would probably put that more so in a category of like a roguelike, yeah. Because that's like the core, like if you boil down the game all the way down, what am I doing second to second and what is it leading into? And that's kind of where I think that you get a lot of those categories from. It's not perfect, but I think it's better than like having like 100 different niche categories.
Well, that's where, so like we get the definition of indie, but at the same time, we still got to look at genre because Dave the Diver, because that's where the aesthetic comes from. Because aesthetic is a genre at this point. I mean, it's in terms of like, because Dave the Diver looks the way it does. If it was a first person game, no one would have even probably thought it was a indie game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you got the aesthetic turning itself into a genre and then also into a developmental crux, or well, in this case, AAA being at the top of its game. So it's indie, but it's not indie. So many people think it's indie.
What if we solve this problem by adding a best, this is going to be very loose, but stick with me, best cozy game category, where the aesthetic is the selling point. That is the selling point of a cozy game, is the aesthetic, the vibes, right? That's all what cozy is. It's all about the vibes, right? Anything can be a cozy game if it matches the vibes.
But okay, but Celeste looks like Dave the Diver visually, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pixely, side scrollery kind of, but then is Celeste,
but it doesn't have the vibes.
But is Celeste cozy? It's not. It's very stressful.
Yes. Then that's the thing, is like, I think that where this kind of cozy category fits in is separating out the games that just have the vibe of an indie versus the ones that are actually indie. Because even taking like some recent examples, right? So Dave the Diver's obviously one where literally in that tweet that I brought up, they talk about like, it's got the vibe, it's giving the vibes of an indie, right? And so I think that could fit into that whole cozy game category. But even taking like other games, you could put something like, granted, Stardew Valley is a indie game, but also it is that cozy vibe game. You know, another example, Coral Island just came out as a Stardew-like game. It is an indie, don't get me wrong. It does have a publisher with Humble Games. It is an indie to an extent, but even that I have a hard time 100% committing to that idea that it's an indie, because if you go look at the team that's making it, they're like, I think 30, 40, 50 people deep.
Right, and that's what I was going to say. Do we have a threshold? Because I would say we keep the term indie if you want. I mean, got indie because it means independent publisher specifically.
Mm-hmm.
And so, because every game is going to be independently developed, that's everything. Independently published is a whole different thing. And then it's like, I want to make a new term that's not indie, that means smaller team size and smaller budget. But let's say we called that, like, just for sake of brevity, we just called that small team. Best, so you got a category of best small team game. When do they become not a small team?
19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31. Yeah, so I just counted up the Stairway Games people that made Coral Island. That is a almost 100-person team. So really, would we call, let me take this as an example, would we call Coral Island an indie game because of that team size? Kind of what you're talking about with the cutoff at almost 100 people. Is that an indie game still?
No. And that's what I was gonna say. But where is the threshold?
Hmm. It's
And
interesting because
then do they get awards for that? So say we said, okay, the threshold is 30. You can't have 30 people on your team because that's a lot of people working on your team. So and let's get rid of the term indie. Let's just say, for sake of brevity, like I just said, it's called small team. So it's like, oh, best small team game. Okay, best small team game. Extremely OK Games. They made Celeste. They have 2 people on their team. Well, they also this year they hired 28. You're no longer an indie game. You know, like what it did. Where so it's like, so then do these people, to get, in order to receive these awards, to have these prestigious titles upon their name, do they keep the number at 29? Because then you got a problem, because then people are like, because then people are like, you can't do that, because then, and there's a lot of things in the, not just in the, there's a lot of things in the music industry that do that. That's not a good thing. And then there's a lot of things in the just regular old American workforce that's not good to do, and there's a whole different thing with that. So
I can see it already, where you've got a team of 30 people, the Game Award nominations are coming up, and you're like,
they fire somebody.
Jerry, I'm sorry, we got to fire you so we can get nominated for the Game Awards. Like,
right,
that'd be awful. The hard thing with the team size thing is I think it's very indicative of genre. I think genre plays a larger role in that, because, for example, you know, if you're in a 100-person team, you would say, oh yeah, you're not a small team. But what if that team made Cyberpunk 2077? Then you're like, okay, comparatively to what you made and the work, that could be a small team for what that game is.
Yeah, well, then we're getting to a whole nother beast. Because then it starts to become very subjective.
Yeah. And that's the problem I feel like with like the team size thing, is I think that it is very subjective to what the game is. Because, you know, looking at like something like Lethal Company, it's a small team, right? Because it's one guy. But if that game was made by 30 people, we'd be like, that's a lot of people for this game, isn't it?
Right.
You know, it's not that deep of a game to where you're like, oh yeah, like this game is, you know, massive. Or
no, but aesthetically, it just looks like another cell shaded Borderlands or something, right? So it's like, what's the difference, you know?
So that's why I do feel like the solution to the problem comes down to genreing out a lot of the titles that would not fit within indie, and then leaving indie as the pure, you are an independent game company that has made this game. Which, you know, people will say, oh, well, doesn't that make Baldur's Gate 3 an independent game? Yeah, and I think that realistically, I would have probably nominated it for Best Indie Game. Is that 100% fair to a lot of the smaller games? No, because Baldur's Gate's going to eat them and spit them out. But at the same time, that's Baldur's Gate, Larian Studios, like, that's an accomplishment, bro. They're an independent studio that made Baldur's Gate 3. That's insane. That's like, you wouldn't get that type of game. Like, if you wanted that type of game 10, 15 years ago, you had to be with EA or Activision or one of the mega companies, right?
Right.
And so that's why I feel like it's almost better if we just genre out a lot of these other titles and leave the indie category purely as
what it is by definition. Yeah.
What it is by definition.
So then, but we need that means that we need a new term for the smaller companies then. Because I used to think that it was the smaller companies, smaller budget, but Baldur's Gate 3 had a much larger budget, but they are independent by definition.
Yeah. By definition, they are independent. Yeah, I do.
And I'm okay with that, but I think we need a new term, and we need it fast, and we need it widespread. This podcast might not reach 1 billion people, but it sure as hell should if we come up with a title, because it needs to change quick.
I mean, I think what it would end up being is, I think that you could go the route of where you grade things essentially by, you know, the A stat. You know, people talk about like AAA, AA games and everything like that. You could grade them by that regard. And I think that gets close to it, but I don't know if it's a great box to put everything in. But
we could do a tier 1 through 10 system. If your budget and if the ratio is your budget to your people, I don't know the numbers yet, but if your budget and your ratio or your budget is ratioed to the amount of people you have in your company. That is, so let's say you are a 300 person company with a $3 million budget. That's a tier 10 game, and then a tier 1 game would be something like Celeste or Cuphead that had pretty much no budget with 2 people.
Honestly, I don't hate that because I'm like big on like just like grading scale stuff like that.
We could do a tier 1 through 5, so it's a little bit more manageable.
Tier 1 through 5, I think, where essentially tier 1 is you're like team size versus
5
budget
or less,
versus
5 or less people, and then 10, like 100K or less budget, right?
Okay. I'd have to do more research into like what budgets are, but honestly, I don't hate a system like that where it is just like kind of a grading scale of do you fit into, you kind of like have like an open end and an open top where things can grow exponentially through the top and things can also deplete exponentially through the bottom through whatever tier 1 is, right?
And then we got, so if you say something is a tier 1 game or whatever we call it, but let's just say that that's this for brevity. So you got, this is a tier 1 game. Well, we got bigger than we thought this year, and now we've hired 6 people. We're now a tier 2 variant game. Or a company.
I low-key love this. I don't know if anybody else loves this that's listening right now, but low-key I kind of love this because I think you're right. We wouldn't necessarily call it a tier 1. We'd come up with better names for it, but the system, God, I love system. God, I love systems HP. The system is solid. We've got just such a good little, oh man, I love lines and I love when lines go up and down. It's fantastic. Oh man. I love it.
I love that. Okay. So, I mean, I think we've figured it out then. We just need to find those thresholds ourselves.
So I think that we'll have to find the thresholds and maybe we do some research and come back to this a different day. But I think we at least have a system where it's like, we now need to define what is tier 1 through tier 5. Right?
Yeah.
And so tier 5, I think tier 5 is easy to do because it's like, are you Call of Duty? Are you Fortnite?
Those are tier 5.
Are you Apex Legends? Like, I feel like 5 is kind of like the easy, like,
easy defined.
Are you a massive title that like is within every home in the world? Then tier 4 is like, I feel like where you probably slot in like your single player, like AAA games. So I think like your Last of Us is, your God of War, it's like your Sony games, your Microsoft games, like a Starfield would probably be like a tier 4, right?
Well, I mean, Bethesda's massive.
They are massive, but if we look at like theoretically how much, oh man, the system's already falling apart. Oh no. If we look at like, put it this way, would you put Starfield on the same pedestal as a Fortnite?
Well, the game, no, but the size, if we're basing it on company size and budget, I mean, how big is Fortnite's team? How big?
Epic Games, I believe, as a whole, is like 3,000. You know what? I'm not even gonna. I'm just gonna look it up.
Epic Games spans across 19 countries, 55 studios, 4,500 employees globally.
Okay, so then Bethesda employee count.
450, a tenth, 1/10 of them.
So yeah, that's automatic. Well, granted, I will say that is Bethesda Game Studios, which still that is the studio that makes the games, but Bethesda as a whole owns a lot of studios as like a publishing wing. But still, like you said, we're talking about more so the studios because I think that the studio is more important than what the publisher is. So then, yeah, at that point, I would call, if anything, maybe we would even call that like a tier 3, right?
That's fair.
Because like a tier 4 then at that point would be, I would say, like a Destiny or like a Bungie essentially, right?
Yeah. I could see that.
Because if you're talking about Epic Games that has 4,500 employees, Bungie has, I believe they're right around 1,000, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. And then you talk about like a Bethesda game works. I feel like that's actually a decent sliding scale where it is cool. You've got your mega conglomerate corporation, you've got your big corporation, then you've got your studio, and then you've got your team
breaking
and then
out of
you've got-
indie.
you've got your double A, you got your team that's like 20 to 50 people or something like that.
Your cocoons, your insides,
your insides, your Sea of Stars, like stuff like that.
Right. That's fair. And Dave the Diver would probably fall in the tier 2, tier 3 category.
Tier 2, tier 3, yeah. I think Mint Rocket is like right around Mint Rocket employees. Employee count. I mean, Nexon has over 6,500 employees, but once again, if we're going more so by the team, yeah, it doesn't really say. Well, in any case, I would agree with that. I think your Dave the Divers would be like a 2 or 3, and then you would have your Celeste, like 2 people teams, Stray Cup Studios like us, we'd be a tier 1. See, I think that works. I think
because I mean, Celeste, extremely okay games. I don't know what their budget's looking like, but they are a team of 8 people.
So
they were 2 people, turned 8. Now Cuphead, same thing. It was 2 brothers, 2 people. And then they added a couple people from the family.
I'd still put that as a tier 1.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a tier. So I think if anything, if you're looking at team size wise, I think we actually have this figured out now.
Team size is probably the bigger one.
1,000 plus, you are a tier 5, right?
That's fair.
Or actually, you know what? I would say multiple thousands plus. So 2,000 or more, I would say would be 5. 1,000 or more, or around 1,000, I should say, would be a 4. Hundreds would be a 3. Dozens would be a 2, and then single
digits would be 1.
Single digits I could maybe see even an
up to 20, maybe
up to like 20, maybe 15, something along those lines is a 1.
I'm with it.
Dude.
We figured it out.
The system.
Never use the term indie again unless you're actually speaking of things like independent published games.
Yes, I agree with that. Indie needs to be given back as an abbreviation for independent. That is what it means. That is all it will mean. It is not a vibe. It is not an aesthetic. It is a legitimate, are they an independent game company that is not owned and that is published? I wouldn't even say they have to self-publish their game necessarily, but as long as the game is created within their own bubble.
So the takeaway from all of this is independent is going back to independent. So use it only accordingly.
Yes.
And then our system is going to be a much better, more thought out scale than just it's indie because it's pixelated. It's not an aesthetic.
I mean, hey, get ready to have to explain the system to every person you ever talk to about video games, because they're gonna be like, "What do you mean it's a tier 4 game?"
Yeah, no, we're gonna make this happen.
We're gonna make it happen. I until my dying breath, I will use this system to define games. Granted, I still think there's more to be defined within the system, because I do once again think budget plays a part in it. But I think at least team size we have figured out.
Start.
And the nice thing about team size is typically that kind of goes hand in hand with budget. You got more people, you got a bigger budget. You got less people, you got a much smaller budget. Right. I feel like that you don't really see a lot of instances of like that changing a ton.
Unless you're being funded by a different publisher, which is why we're not using the term indie.
Exactly. Boom. Fixed. You're welcome, Twitter and Reddit and all those other social media platforms.
We did it. We've solved the problem.
Now we would have to come up with names for the tier 1 through 5. That way we're not just, I mean, I'm also fine with calling it tier 1 through 5, but I'm also that guy that like,
if you just add the term game after it, it's not that bad. So tier 5 is a tier 5. It's a tier 5 game. Oh, it's a tier 1 game.
See, I vibe with that. I vibe with that heavy. But I'm also the guy in like Destiny raid encounters where people are like, I want to call it close left. And I'm like, just call that 1. I just wanted to call it 1 and call that 2 and that 3.
That's because the intensity of the encounter, you need brevity.
Yeah, exactly. I just want 1, I don't want close second
But if you
left.
say it's a 5 game, it doesn't make sense. It's like
That's
you're
true.
missing out on like a little bit of the context of the conversation.
It's a tier 5 game. So this is what we're gonna do when we watch Game Awards this Thursday. Every game that gets announced, we're gonna be like,
This is a tier 3 game.
I think this is a tier 3 game.
Yeah.
Oh, this is the tier 4.
That is going to be a
whoa.
very fun stream. I hope no one misses that, and hopefully everybody enjoys it with us, because I think that's going to be a very fun night.
That is going to be a very
Get your
fun night,
popcorn.
especially with this new system.
Get your pajamas, get your popcorn, and we'll all hang out and just have a good time and watch these amazing, beautiful creations that, I mean, we had one of the best years we could have ever had in this decade.
I know. If we can cap it off with like a banger Game Awards, it'll be awesome. It'll be an awesome year. Granted, not for the industry as a whole because of all the layoffs and stuff.
Fair.
But the games themselves have obviously been very good.
Yeah. It's not a good time to just be in the job market at all, but at the same time, we did a really good job at they did a really good job at making the games. But unfortunately the industry, because of the economy, just suffered a little bit. Year of the bangers, exactly.
You guys are tier 5 homies. You guys are tier 5 chat. Actually, realistically, based off of our numbers, it tier 1 to 2 chat based off of how many people listening. If we could get to a tier 5 audience, that'd be insane. Alrighty.
Is that we capping that off? Is that a good? And then we'll see you guys next Thursday.
I think so. I think that's at least a good starting point. And this system will evolve. All right, everybody, calm down. We're not going to etch this into stone yet for future generations to look at. We're still going to do some revisions. We're going to see if the system works. But from now on, I'm going to tell all your FBI agents, if these guys get caught using the goddamn term indie, get them. Fucking get them.
Unless they're using it properly. No more of this aesthetic
Unless
crap.
they're using it properly. And if that FBI agent doesn't understand, I'm going to send the CIA on them. That's just how it is.
Just because a game looks like Dave the Diver doesn't mean it's indie.
It is not indie, all right? That is a tier 2 game, all right? It's still small. It still deserves respect for being smaller. Well, it's not really all that small, but it's kind of small. As a tier 2 game, though, all right? It is not indie. Baldur's Gate should have been nominated for indie game of the year. I'm going insane. I don't know what's wrong with me right.
Love this.
I get very excited with systems, all right, guys?
You should see his world system for his what is that? What was that called? That thing is awesome. Like a solar system for your organizational skills and stuff.
The solar system.
Yeah, it was like a thing that you would like click on and it would like zoom in and this is what you need to do for the week.
And
then you'd like go to
all my brain mapping stuff.
Yeah, the brain mapping.
Systems, bro.
Love it.
Oh man, if I could systemize everything in the world,
that's why we complete each other, because I'm all over the place.
I know. And I just want to system you so bad. I just want to.
And with that, that's the 2-hour mark. Almost exactly. We're about 20 seconds out. We'll see you guys Thursday and possibly also Saturday. And Saturday might be a short one next week if we do a full one on Thursday. But I think the watch party alone is going to be super fun. Do not miss it. We're going to all watch it together. So.
And we're going to have a great time. Tier 1 through 5 and everything.
Yep. That's going to be a blast.
Damage check system for life. All right.
Damage check system. There we go. Yeah. Love you guys. See ya.
See ya.